It's the sick show. It's the sick show. It's the sick show.
A little. Oh, sorry. There we go. That little ding when
Yeah.
it chimes in. I was sitting here spacing out. I was actually doing some work.
Yeah.
Right as you binged in. But we're recording today, believe it or not.
All right, man. I
It's
love it.
pretty incredible. Technology is an amazing thing, and it's helped us connect, right? But at the
Yeah,
same time, it kind of disconnected us in a way
that's right.
yesterday too.
Man, so do we tell the audience that we had a magical 90 minutes of radio yesterday that didn't get recorded?
You know,
You know?
I'm an honest guy. It's who I
Yeah.
am. And when you go 90 minutes and you look up and you see that nothing had been recording, there's that gut feeling you get.
Yeah, that's right. It takes the wind out of your sails a little
A
bit.
little bit, and like I told you, I felt like, gosh, we're going to lose some of that organic feel that it had. But I think
Yeah.
both of us are. There's enough left in the tank
Yeah.
that nobody's going to know any different. So it could have went without saying, but I don't think
Yeah.
that's fair. It's not fair to my listeners.
I'll tell you this, man. I was connecting with my wife last night and she asked how it went, and she knew I was really excited to do this. I've been more excited to do your show than any podcast appearance in the last 5 years. And I was telling her about you and this kid from back home, and he's got this podcast, and she saw that I was more excited about it, and I was like, it was amazing. We had the best conversation. We could have gone 2 more hours, and I guess this is just our opportunity to keep going.
That's exactly what it is. Well, I want to catch everybody up to what we already know, and make sure that we don't miss that opportunity, right? Because I think there's still some great nuggets in here, and I got to thinking about some different things yesterday after we got off our meet, and I thought, we're going to hit some really deeper level stuff today. But first, I want to bring up the article about White Christmas and how I felt that I felt like you really shorted Danny. And but,
dude, you're hung up on this, man. You're defending Danny Kaye. I love it. I love your loyalty to him.
Man, he's the star of the show. Let's be honest. He had the personality, and there are times when I feel a lot more like Bob, but especially in my entertainment career, I was a lot more like Bob. I was always the professional. Let's put on the show. Come on, Phil. Let's get it right today. And when I was in a band, it was always, hey, we're here. This is our job. This is business. Well, at least the second iteration of a band I was in. The first iteration was not. It was 100% a party band. But our second band,
we do 30 seconds on your music career. I know we kind of briefly touched on this yesterday, but I heard in another episode that you were in a band that covered some metal bands that I loved.
100%.
One of which being Pantera, and I'm not, Scott, musically inclined. I was in the band in Hartford City. I was in the Blackford band because my mom was convinced that if you were in band, they would put you in classes with good kids, and she put a saxophone in my hand one day, and she was like, I don't care if you play this, you can just sit there with it, but you're going to be in the band.
That's so awesome.
Isn't that funny, man?
In fourth grade, Mr. Sills tried to give me.
Dude, what a legend, Mr.
Right?
Sills.
My parents bought their house. So the house grew up in, the house he grew up on South Cherry Street, we bought that in 1986 or something. And that's where we moved to when we moved south in Hartford City from the junkyard to South Cherry.
Yep.
And that's the home we moved into was
Gosh, man, I didn't realize that was Mr. Sills' house.
Yeah.
There was a guy, and I swear I'll get us back on track. I'm doing digressions of digressions now, but there was an awesome guy who, in my immaturity, I didn't realize how great he was at the time, and I didn't take advantage of, his passion for music and trying to teach us. And I think I was just a knucklehead, just kind of a meathead in those years. But I wish I'd leaned into music because I love it, man. And I've always been a passionate consumer of music. And we talked about soundtracking kind of aspects of our lives yesterday. And Pantera was one of those football soundtrack bands for me, where as I'm flying around the field, they're in my head. And I wanted to ask you, what was your favorite Pantera song to cover?
Oh
Like
man.
as somebody
Well,
who was playing.
of course, Walk. Walk is
Yeah,
the, like the seminal song, but
yeah,
gosh, it would have to be Walk. And when I say that, it's because in my head I can see I was watching Jason Glass learn to play the solo in the song.
you played
And
with Jason Glass. That's
dude,
so wild.
I had some impressive. I've been very fortunate to have some great musicians
Yeah,
around me,
yeah,
and Jason was certainly one of them. But watching him learn to play the solo by ear
yeah,
was it's one of those things, you watch somebody do something and it gets stuck in your head,
yeah,
and watching Jason learn to play that and just his hands moving on the neck of the guitar,
yeah,
and he was just so in the groove with everything he did,
yeah,
and it was perfect.
yeah,
Like, I don't know that I've heard it played as well as he did it outside of Dimebag. He understood, he felt it. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah,
Pete and I were talking about how um, we we don't just listen to music, we hear it. And Jason
yeah,
was one of those guys. He could hear what was going on. He could
yeah,
really feel that musicianship. So I would say it was
yeah,
probably that was my favorite Pantera song.
yeah,
I don't know if it was my favorite song to perform.
yeah.
I really like singing Train Train
Okay.
because it was
Yeah,
just simple, and
yeah,
it was a crowd pleaser, of course. It had a great
sure.
groove. Um, we did a lot of Alice in Chains as
Okay, yeah.
well,
Great
and
bands.
loved. I'm a huge Alice in Chains fan.
Yeah,
I wasn't an '80s music fan. I
yeah,
liked it well enough,
yeah.
to kind of be there.
Hmm.
But I never really connected with it. But when
Yeah.
I heard Slayer South of Heaven
Hmm.
for the first time, something changed for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what I was
Yeah.
hearing. But I knew that I connected with
Yeah.
with the groove. I didn't even know the words or the name of the song.
Sure.
I
Sure.
just connected with the music part of it. And from then on, I was probably 15 at the time.
Sure.
And from then on, it was just okay. I know what direction I'm going. And there was some metal I didn't connect with.
Yeah,
I,
that's right.
I, I
That's right.
it was very hard for me to connect with Cookie Monster type,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
music. I, lyrically, I need to know what's going on, which is why
Absolutely.
I'm a huge fan of Slipknot.
Uh-huh.
I like the lyrical component of that. I like
Yeah.
Corey Taylor's story. Um,
Yeah.
so I think a lot of music I connect with, it has to be very musically
Yeah.
inviting
Yeah.
and enjoyable to listen to. I need a groove. Pantera is definitely
Yeah.
a groove band,
Oh my
and
gosh. Yeah. Unbelievable
it,
groove band. And like we didn't have I remember where I was when I discovered some of that music. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
And like getting I don't know, like an Alice in Chains CD that I borrowed from like Mikey Nottingham at Blackford, or getting some Rage Against the Machine tape from
right.
like Trip
Oh
Kane, and
man,
just like discovering stuff for the first time. And music was more. We talked about the monoculture yesterday a little
yeah,
bit. It was more of a communal monocultural kind of thing. You're riding around in somebody's car and like they play a tape for you or a CD or whatever, and you discover it and you realize you like it, and there's a lot of joy in that. And I always envied guys like you, guys like Jason Glass, who could like tap into the joy of performing it because you have the talent to do that. I had a situation, you'll get a kick out of this. So I teach writing at a university, and this was a couple years ago. I had this kid in one of my classes, my 100 level journalism class, who was really into music. And we would always get into these digressions in class talking about music and bands and stuff. And we would end up playing music for each other and just kind of talking about it. And he was sort of for lack of a better term, a hipster,
okay,
and we both kind of ascertained that we were enough on the like self-loathing hipster spectrum that we could never really do a commercial thing. And I was like, Dave, what if I wrote like the most center cut you're shopping at Macy's in 2012 kind of pop song, and the most vapid like center cut pop song, and you could put a melody to it and we could record it. And he was like, yeah, he's like, I'd be down. And I didn't know if he was serious or not. And I really love that energy of like joke projects that turn serious.
Yeah.
So lo and behold, one night I wrote this song about my first date with my wife and kind of falling in love with her, and this situation that we got into where I almost like drove to Arkansas to fight some guy for her.
Man,
it was wild, dude.
I like the commitment.
I coalesced all this into a song. And lo and behold, this kid wrote a melody, and we recorded it together.
Where can I find this?
I'll send you the link once we get off the air. It's called "Caution to the Wind,"
Okay. All right.
and we had a blast with it. And he, of course, he's super talented and a great singer, and he recorded me singing, and it was a lot of fun. But
awesome.
yeah, I envy people with real musical talent.
Well, my second band, so this iteration of the band kind of fell apart. I actually got married. So we were together a couple years, and we played up at Hartford City Heritage Days in 95 or 96. And that year we were kind of peaking, we had put together enough music to go play 3 hours. It was choppy. I mean,
sure.
But we had a very loyal following. We were doing something very different than everybody else in the area.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a lot of energy around us, and that carried through. Played bars and parties and stuff like that. And then the next summer, I got married. The day I got married was the same day as the Heritage Days band contest.
Oh wow!
I got married, and a few hours later, I'm on stage.
Dude, that's like the setup to a movie. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was. It's like chapter
and
one.
What was your wife's like attitude toward that?
She was very supportive.
Yeah.
But it's like I've said to others. Chapter one in Scott is not someone's hero. The most important person in his life's hero at that moment. This is our honeymoon night, and I'm on stage singing to a crowd, and she's out there, watching. So one of those where she believed in it, she believed in me, and she was very supportive, and I appreciate it. And she had always been supportive of my musical, aspirations, and it came to a point in time to where I had to make a decision. Either I was going to be the best husband ever, and start that journey, or I was going to be a touring type artist. We were going to have to make that decision and make that move in order for it to progress. And some events happened that clearly weren't going to allow that to be a reality. And it was, I'm done. I'm moving on.
It's such an interesting age to be, you're in your early to mid 20s, you're trying to figure out who you are, what you want to do. And I was married young. I got married at 20, so midway through my junior year of college, and it was a gift from the Lord. I mean, the best thing that ever happened to me in so many ways, but you're still kicking the tires on a lot of ideas. And I remember I was playing semi-pro football for most of my 20s and dragging my poor wife around to these high school fields on Saturday nights, and I'm playing with like ex-convicts and crazy people just flying around getting my body beat up. And I remember at times looking up in the stand, seeing her, and I'm like, man, I got this beautiful, like really smart girl. Like, what am I doing out in these cow towns getting the crap kicked out of me for nothing? But you're trying it out, and she believed in it. I believed in it. And we had fun along the way.
Absolutely. Yeah. We had a great time and met a lot of great people. And
that's right.
I enjoyed, I have no regrets about any of that. There was a second iteration that happened. So that one ended, I was 23, 24 at the time when we ended. Cuffed Bucket was the name of that band. And we got the name because there was, Veruca Salt was a band at the time.
Yeah, Seether.
Yeah, so Veruca Salt is a character from Willy Wonka. Charlie Bucket is a character from Wonka, and at least that's the story I tell.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where others may have, decided that name came from. But then our next iteration was a band called Cuffed, and I was 28 at the time. Lane Staley had died, and I just felt inspired. I was like, I've got to do something. I've got a talent, and I want to share it. And
Yeah.
rejoined with Mike Wine, who was the guitarist in the band in the previous band, and then we hooked up with a couple other guys, Jason Minerding, who was from Portland area, and a guy
Hmm.
named Brian Stevens, who was from around Muncie, and fantastic. I mean, musicians,
Yeah.
and these guys just took us to another level of creativity and professionalism.
Yeah.
And we were able to put out a 6-song EP within 6 months. We were selling T-shirts, had a website,
Wow.
and we were profitable in six
Yeah.
months, and that's just unheard of in most, if not all, businesses.
Yeah.
We weren't rolling in cash, so it
Yeah.
wasn't, it didn't look like a rap video by any means.
Sure.
But we were to the point to where we were now not only supporting ourselves, but being able to reinvest money back
Yeah.
into the band. And once again, some events occurred that just weren't going to allow it to move forward. We tried to make some changes, and it just didn't have the same feel for me.
Yeah.
And I ended that, and that ended my singing career for the most part.
Yeah.
That music, my daughter just sent me a text the other day, and she said, if people wanted to hear Cuffed music, would you be willing to put it out on YouTube? And
Yeah.
her text said, and when I say people, I mean me.
Yeah. That's outstanding. Well,
So
she wants to hear what dad was up to, like when
yeah,
you were her
yeah,
age. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And
absolutely, yeah,
that's
and that's
pretty
where she's
cool.
at. And um,
Well,
so I
we
am.
touched on it.
I've got a YouTube channel set up to put it on. I was playing
Okay.
around with it the other day, and I tried to go ahead and upload it, but it's all MP3. So I've got to
Yeah.
switch it to MP4 so I can roll it up there, and I'll just put like
There
a
you go.
stock picture to
Yeah.
create the slide or whatever.
That's awesome, though.
So
I often bemoan technology. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I'm kind of a Luddite, kind of an old man. I'm on zero forms of social media besides LinkedIn, which is how I met you. I don't
yeah,
even know if LinkedIn counts, but
I think it
that's how I.
does.
Yeah, I think it does, man. That's how I became aware of your show, and you had one of my friends, one of my contemporaries, Pete Lentz on, and I was really excited to hear that. But technology, it does give us the chance to do this, and it
Hmm.
gives our kids the chance to hear our voices in perpetuity. And I've been podcasting for like a decade, and you've been at it now for a while. And
6 months doesn't qualify as a
yeah,
while to me, Tim.
well, no, it's you got a nice body of work out there, and a great head of hair, by the way. I'm a little
Oh
jealous,
man,
but
it's
but
time for a
it's been
cut.
good, and it's we talked yesterday about how we would give anything to hear our grandfather's voices again,
Right.
and because of this kind of technology, our kids and Lord willing, our grandkids will be able to hear our voices, and that's pretty cool.
When you said that, it was just like, okay, it really sunk in that I need to put Cuffed out on the web to
There you
share
go.
it.
Well,
And
I look forward to hearing it. Yeah,
that, not that I've been shy about it. It's just as I told Pete, it's one more thing to
that's right.
to kind of maintain and kind
That's
of
right.
watch. But
Yeah, and that stuff
I feel like
it
I
gets
could.
tedious. Yeah,
Yeah, but that I think and I've learned that with my podcast, I don't monitor it near as much as I did in the
yeah,
beginning, where I was like, oh
yeah.
my God, I got,
Right.
100 listens
Yeah, that's
yesterday,
right.
and which is cool, but
Mhm.
I don't really monitor that as much. Now I'm just kind of,
Yeah.
it's kind of in my, I don't know, would you call that your purview? It's just, it's,
Yeah, I think in the being in the media business for, gosh, 20, 25 years now myself, starting in magazines and then book publishing, and now, still doing books and podcasts, I made a decision pretty early on to never check numbers and never read reviews, good or bad, because if
sure.
I read the good ones, I would get kind of puffed up with pride
Yeah.
and feel gross. And then if I read the
Yeah.
bad ones, I'd be devastated and feel gross.
You
So I
think,
just kind of decided not to do it,
I've thought about this a lot. And we I don't know if it's American culture. I don't know if it's that way around the world because I've never been anywhere really, outside of the United States, outside of the Bahamas. Does that really
Sure.
count?
Yeah.
But do in our culture, it's a really interesting way that we accept compliments.
Mm.
When someone says something nice and hey, I enjoyed this, I enjoy that, boy, whatever. We have
Yeah.
this apologetic almost reception of it.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's like I feel as though it's rejecting a prideful sense of oneself. I don't know how
Yeah.
else to put it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, we have an American culture that is, and especially with social media now, it's really exposed our
Yeah.
like culture.
Uh-huh.
And I wonder sometimes when we get a compliment, how we go, oh, come on now,
Yeah.
it's a two-way street. There are people that say, "Oh, come on now," and they're like,
Yeah.
"Bring it, come on,
Yeah.
keep going." Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
shucks,
For
darn
sure.
it. And there are others that are like, "No, stop.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear that." And I wonder if when it's the real stop, hey, I don't want to hear that. If it's for me, I'm not done yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I hear that type of thing, and
Mm-hmm.
when I read reviews, and I read emails and reviews that come in, and I try to
Sure.
respond to anything and everything that comes my way through this podcast,
Yeah.
the good and the bad.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm continually trying to build, and I haven't always had that open of a attitude towards trying
Yeah.
to self improvement.
Yeah.
I think I've always had an idea of self improvement, but I don't know that I've always been willing to say, "Hey, thank you. Wait till you see what happens next."
Yeah. Well,
You know,
I'm glad you were willing to accept the compliment from me. That's how these conversations started. And I can honestly say I love giving compliments.
I do
I
too.
enjoy encouraging people, and I enjoy finding talent, and encouraging the talent along. So it would follow then that we would be receptive to receiving compliments and doing it in a genuine way, and realizing that, like, and this is a place I think you have to work toward if you're putting out any kind of product or media. My worth is not in the good review,
Right.
and my
Yeah.
worth is not in the bad review.
Yep.
And by God's grace, He's allowed me to grow in that over the years. But it's taken time, man. And we talked yesterday, like, I'm not a thick-skinned person. Everybody says in writing, oh, you got to have thick skin. And I'm like, man, I don't have, I think I have thin skin, the thinnest skin probably. But, being able to take stuff, whether it's good or bad, and kind of putting it in its proper place, that's part of the growth that you have to make in this business, I think.
It's the educator in us too.
Yeah, that's right.
That
Mhm.
feedback portion. And
Yeah.
I learned I learned so much being in the classroom
Yeah.
about not only about myself and the topic and other people, but like just about how you are perceived by others. I was always very
Yeah.
observant of how others received my message and
Sure.
just body language. I mean, we would
Yeah.
spend time talking about body language in my classroom, and it was social
Sure.
studies, but
Yeah.
I would talk to the kids about just body language and
Yeah.
how we communicate, and trying to help them understand that, as a 14-year-old boy in my
Yeah.
classroom, his body language said so much more than the words.
Yeah.
And I thought about that myself as I'm watching that all unfold with kids. It's like, what's my body language saying about me?
Mm.
And as a very young teacher, I would stand in front of the mirror and do my lesson
Sure.
before I went to the classroom, so I
Yeah.
could see how I looked as I presented it.
Yeah.
I also learned that sometimes we just need to slow down,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know?
that's right. Slow
And
down and be relational. And
yeah,
man, I don't know about you, but when I was at Blackford, being an educator was not even a glimmer in anyone's eye. Like, I did not see this career coming. And I don't know if you had an inkling of it back then. I certainly didn't. And I got into teaching kind of mid-career as a writer. So I would have been, in my early 30s. I'd done a few books. I was completely freelance, so kind of living like a pirate. You kill, and it was
I like
great,
it.
and it was fun, and we got to travel a lot and meet a bunch of people and do a bunch of cool things. But the income was up and down, so I started teaching. And my first teaching job was at this community college in northern Michigan, kind of teaching the personal essay to like ex-convicts, like guys who had just gotten out of prison, and it was a real rough crowd, but I loved it, man. I
Yeah.
absolutely loved it. And it was part performance, so in the same way that
Man, it so is.
you would go out and play a Pantera song for an audience, that kind of felt like that. Like you
Yeah.
got this room full of people for an hour and a half, and you got to put on for them, and you got to keep them dialed in, and man, I love the relational aspect of it. The performance aspect of teaching is still kind of a buzz. I still kind of get a kick out of it, and I love the material, so I think that helps a lot too. But
I thought I was going to be a math teacher.
okay. Wow.
I had full intent when I went to Ball State. My major, my declared major as a freshman, which I know, whatever, but
Yeah.
was math education, secondary math
Sure.
education. I wanted to be a math teacher, and I found out very quickly. Number one, I wasn't prepared for college, and my 6-week tour of Ball State's finest party locations
There you go. Yeah.
got me a pretty quick exit, and
Yeah.
I'm thankful for that. It was
Yeah.
a very tough lesson for me. Things had come pretty easy for me.
Sure.
Not that I'm overly intelligent or smart, but I didn't have to work hard.
Yeah.
I think that was part of the reason I quit football was I had to start working hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
In 8th grade, I was always bigger and stronger
Yeah.
than most of the guys that I was playing against. And I remember coming back to 8th grade football, and Rob Hess was on the boards with me,
Yeah.
and I had to work.
Yeah.
Like I had to work, and it was a wake up
Yep.
call, and it was early in the season, and it was the
Yep.
first time I was ever fearful that somebody might get my spot.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'd never had to fear that before. I dominated others for quite a while, and he'd put the work in. He had grown,
Sure.
and he wanted that spot,
Yeah.
and he was coming after it. And
Yeah.
I learned a lot that season about, okay, now I got to work, and I did work hard that season, and it spilled over into my freshman year, and worked very hard my freshman year, and I didn't want to lose my spot.
Yeah.
And as I think that spilled over into school as well, where in school I didn't have to work hard, and I still
Yeah.
got good enough grades to where my parents were happy. I was AB kind of kid. And,
Sure.
I
Yeah.
remember getting my first D my junior year, first D ever, and it
Oh,
was
what class?
Mrs. Tree's trig class.
Oh man. See, I never even matriculated that high in math.
I didn't put the
topped
work
out
in.
at like yeah.
I didn't
I
put
think
the
I
work
topped
in.
out at algebra 2. Yeah.
I'd taken geometry and algebra 2 my sophomore year, and I went into her class, and I was not prepared to put the work in, and I
Yeah.
got that D, and I was so embarrassed. And
Yeah.
Corby Roberson and we talked about shame. I was ashamed of that grade,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
when that happened, I knew my dad was going to be upset.
Yeah.
Not to the point to where, he was like,
Yeah.
oh, I can't believe, but just
Right.
upset, like,
Disappointed.
what's
Yeah.
going on,
Yeah. That's right.
And I said, I'll get the grade up. I promise I'll get the grade up. I
Yeah.
got to put the work in. And I did,
Yeah.
and I got the work in. When I got to my senior year and I was in calculus with Mr. Norton, I
Yeah.
didn't get it. I didn't understand it.
Sure.
It was so far out of my reach that I think I knew pretty quickly I'm not going to be able to do enough. I'm not willing to do enough work, and I
Yeah.
probably won't be able to do enough work to
Sure.
understand it and be successful in this class. And I asked him out in the hallway, maybe week 2 of the class, and we just talked. I was crying in the hallway. I was so upset that I had to drop a
Oh man.
class.
Oh.
And here's a
Yeah.
senior boy talking to Mr.
Yeah.
Norton, and
Yeah.
Mr. Norton he was very nice about it. He was very professional about it. And he said, hey,
Yeah.
you just
Yeah.
need to go downstairs and talk to Mrs. Allen and let her
Yeah.
know what's going on.
Yep.
It
Yep.
might be in your best interest to drop the class. I didn't want to lose
Yeah.
my GPA. I didn't want to lose
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
the
that's
chance to
right.
go to Ball State. And
Yeah.
All the things that came along with that. So I went down and withdrew, and
Yeah.
how we got here, I don't know, but withdrew that class, and I end up in basic math with Mr. Green. You remember Mr. Green? He taught a
No.
flight class and basic math, and maybe it wasn't physical science because I think that was Mr. Cooper. But
Yeah. I remember Mr. Cooper.
Mr. Green was on the end, like almost in this hallway where there's only one door.
Yeah, dude, that's so wild.
So I'm in a basic math class.
First floor or second
Second
floor?
floor. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So like the chem labs were here, and you come
Yep.
around the corner. So oh god, come
Yeah.
around the corner, and there was some lockers there, and Mr. Green. But so I'm in this basic math with Mr. Green, and I'm helping
Yeah.
him teach it.
Yeah. That's
And
outstanding.
that was when I was like, I can do this. I can do
Man,
this.
that's amazing. What a formative moment.
I
Very
enjoyed
cool.
helping the students that were in there that needed that class, that needed a basic math class.
Dude, can I ask you a weird question?
Yeah.
How often do you think of like the geography of our high school? You know what I mean? I was telling you yesterday about the Cleat House thing, where like once a
yeah.
year I'll have a dream about the Cleat House, and it's laser specific and perfect. I have that experience from time to time with the high school, and I don't feel like I'm one of these people who like really lives in the past too much. I mean, I
Sure.
love nostalgia. I love the past, and we were talking about this yesterday a little bit. I was trying to convey to my kid, he's 21 and he's interested in my life, and yeah, I was telling him we went to high school in a John Hughes movie. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Oh,
And I
yeah.
didn't realize it. I
Gosh.
didn't appreciate it at the time. I had no appreciation for it. But now that I do some like misty-eyed, like backward gazing
Yeah.
about high school, I'm like, it was a John Hughes movie and it was incredible, you
We
know?
really did. And, when I think about, I guess for me, it's a little bit different because I worked in the school system for 5 years. My
Yeah, that
kids
probably
went
took a
there.
little bit of the romance out of it, you
Yeah,
know?
somewhat.
Yeah.
In other ways, it kind of created a new thought process that went into, what our teachers were doing
Hmm.
when we didn't see them.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
right.
I I don't know when they banned smoking at the high school, what year that was, but I can remember as a freshman walking by the teachers' lounge and
Oh,
smoke
yeah.
coming out of it.
Oh, it's like a cloud of smoke
Oh
coming out
man,
of there, man.
Mr. Beaver had Marlboros in his pocket during class teaching.
Oh, absolutely.
You
That guy was
know,
outstanding.
oh, love
Yeah,
Mr. Beaver.
yeah.
He was
Absolutely.
incredible. But
No, but you realize like they were real people dealing with the real issues of life and the existential things that we deal with now in middle
yeah,
age, and like they were going through that blender and relationships and marriage and parenting kids and
yeah,
all the
yeah.
stuff that we're going through,
They
you
were
know.
they were phenomenal relationship builders, and,
Yeah.
that was probably the biggest lesson I took from all of my teachers, without even realizing it. When I became an educator, and not just an educator, heck, when I was out repoing cars for 10 years,
Yeah.
that was something that I utilized, was that relationship building piece that I'd learned from my teachers while there. Mrs.
Yeah.
Williams was my
Oh, yeah.
was my teacher. Like
Yep.
I
She was
still
great.
communicate with her today, and
Oh, no
um,
way. I don't know if she'd remember me, but tell her I said
I
hello.
will. It's been a
Yeah.
minute since I talked to her. She lost her son, and when he passed, I shot her out a message, and so
Hmm.
it's not like I talk to her on a weekly basis. It's
Sure.
probably once a
Sure.
year, but
Yeah.
we invite all those folks to come to our class reunion, and
Ah,
we
that's
have
great.
5-year class reunions religiously for the past
Wow.
30 years, and
Yeah.
so we stay pretty tight. And our teachers know that we have 5-year class reunions, and they're all
Yeah.
invited. Mr. Richardson
Yeah.
showed up a couple years ago. Mrs.
Oh,
Williams
that's
showed up
amazing.
a few years ago. I mean, they actually show up, and that's, man, how cool is that? That these
That's
folks
incredible.
that we had such admiration for, well, most of them,
Yeah.
and I would say most of us had admiration for most of them, if
Yeah.
not all. I don't know of a
Yeah.
teacher where I was like, oh, I couldn't stand that person.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure someone had that person. I'm
That's
sure
right.
I've been that person. Uh,
Sure. Yeah.
but at the same time, boy, we're 30 years removed from that.
Yeah.
And boy, what a way to move forward in life, to be able to let go of 30 years of disdains, towards someone else
Yeah.
or some situation that happened
Yeah.
32, 34 years ago, you know?
Yeah. Well, you see it through new eyes, and you see it through the lens of
Sure.
maturity and adulthood, and there's a little bit more compassion there, as there should be.
Well, speaking of coming a long way, Ted Kluck has come a long way. And I want to hear more of your story of
Yeah.
how we go from Blackford High School to Taylor
Yeah.
to semi-pro football to a
Yeah.
writing career
Yeah.
to I think you're an associate professor.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been at my my
Heck,
university
man.
for 9 years now. So yeah,
Wow.
kind of a wild ride.
What university are you at?
I'm at Union University here
Okay.
in Jackson, Tennessee. So we're very Taylor-esque.
Okay.
We've got like 4,000 students, Christian school. I love it dearly.
Yeah.
I really love the work, and I really want to see it work. And I'm so grateful to be here. But how I got here, man. So we remember each other from the Main Street Gym
Yep.
in Hartford City, which I think you were a senior when I was a freshman, so we kind of missed each other as far as like really knowing one another in high school. And I was pretty shy back then.
Sure.
I was a pretty nervous kind of
Me
introverted guy. Yeah, yeah. I don't believe that for a second. But when you had seen me in the Main Street Gym, I was probably a freshman, sophomore, kind of skinny, kind of wormy.
Mhm.
But I spent a lot of time in there with my dad lifting, and that was kind of my safe haven.
Dude,
it was
your
a
dad,
great place. My dad was
he
an
was a
absolute
beast,
unit.
man.
Yeah, he was a beast, dude. That guy, just for a second, he played like beer league hockey, ice hockey, until he was 70 years old. So I had this weird experience of like driving him to the rink when he's 60, and I would drop him off and be like, "Pops, don't get hurt,"
Oh my gosh.
which was his experience driving me to football games and stuff as a kid.
Absolutely.
But no, he was a unit, and it was a great way to spend time with him. And as I look back on that gym, just a great place to meet people,
Yeah.
yourself, Tony Skaggs, like Tom and Kay. I spent so much time there. They gave me a key, and they actually gave me a job.
Oh wow.
So like my junior year of high school, I just ended up working there. And they paid me in cash and cake. She ran that cake business out of the back.
Yep.
And that was the best job I've ever had. It was remarkable. So I spent a lot of time there and got strong and really pursued the football thing hard, man. And football was an idol for me. Looking back, I had a really distorted relationship with it. But some really great people came alongside me. Your brother-in-law, Jim Knuckles, being one.
Jim's
just
a huge
one of my
fan.
Oh my
Huge
gosh.
fan.
And I'm a huge fan of him, and please convey that to him. But one of the kindest people, and he really invested in me. And man, I have laser specific memories of like workouts that we did together. And he had this this parachute that you would like strap on you and run sprints, and it would make you faster. And then you take the parachute off and you'd feel like you were flying.
Yeah.
But he really worked with me, and he helped me like cut together highlight videos in my senior year and convey this to him.
Well,
There's
listen,
a memory.
He's a listener.
I love it. I love it.
He's a listener. So
Jim really wanted me to go to a big school. And one of my best memories was I got to take a recruiting visit to Indiana my senior year. So I got to drive down to Bloomington with my dad, and I could tell my dad was proud.
Oh, sure.
And it was an incredible day, and tour in the facility and getting to walk out on the field and see the helmets and watch the highlight film, and that was Jim Knuckles doing. He was behind that. And just super thankful for him. But anyway, had this injury my senior year. It happened in practice, so I broke my leg, and
gosh.
And poor Jim, I mean, he takes responsibility for it, which he shouldn't. It was in no way his fault. But and I've told him several times it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
Because it was the Lord disabusing me of this idol in my life. So I broke it my senior year. I ended up going to Taylor, which was a small college up the road, and playing there, and broke it again my freshman year, and had this elaborate surgery my sophomore year, which I thought was the end of ever being an athlete. And I was really in the deeps emotionally about it. And we didn't talk about mental health and stuff like that back then. It wasn't a part of the conversation, but I was in a low ebb emotionally because I thought I'd lost football forever, and I had to find another persona. And I had this professor at Taylor his kids went to Blackford, Jeremy and Jabin Byrne
Yeah, I
were
love those guys, man.
they were great friends, amazing guys, and their dad was Joe Burnworth, who taught education at Taylor. And I had him for a class, and it just in the way that you remember specific things about professors, he spoke so warmly about his wife and about the Lord, and apart from remembering any specific thing about the class, I just remember how he was and how he treated me. And I remember when I was laid up in the hospital after this surgery, he came and he visited, which is so next level. I mean, what professor would
Right.
do that?
Right.
So he came and visited, and he leaned over the hospital bed railing, and he was like, "Have you ever considered becoming a writer?" And I hadn't. I'd never given it a moment's
So
thought.
interesting.
But that was kind of the first seed of it. And then I met my wife. She was a senior. I was a sophomore at Taylor. We met with 3 weeks to go in her college career. And she was a smart, kind of hot little English theater girl, really loved writing and took it seriously. And she read some of my stuff and encouraged me to do it. And, we were married midway through my junior year, and it all kind of grew from there. So I started, believe it or not, writing poems. I got some poems published like right out of college, and that didn't really pay, obviously. And so I was working this day job. I was a junk mail copywriter.
Okay.
But at the time, my buddies, I had two buddies from college, and we had started this thing called The Field Judge, satire for the discerning sports fan. And it was just an easy, and it went out via email once a week. We didn't even have a website. It was super lo-fi. But we built this kind of big audience with it, and we had sponsors, and I started spamming editors from ESPN and Fox, and ESPN reached out one day and they said, would you like to write for the magazine? And man, you could have
Wow.
knocked me over with a feather.
Oh my
I
God.
was
I made it.
delighted. Yeah, I made it. I felt like I'd made it, right? And I was writing these little like one-line jokes for the magazine, but that grew into bigger stuff and features and getting to write for the online and getting to cover some boxing. And in about 2004, 2005, probably, I was in Orlando and I was visiting my in-laws, and it was the middle of summer, the inland Florida. It was like 150 degrees, and I was bored, and it was my in-laws, and it was awkward and the whole thing. And I saw this guy across the street sweeping his sidewalk, and he was a big, kind of put together African American dude. And I did a thing that was really out of character for me at the time. I walked over and I said hello and I introduced myself. And he said, "Yeah, I'm Pinklin Thomas. I was heavyweight champion between Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson." And I knew I'd recognized him. And I loved the fights. I loved boxing. I'd grown up loving it. And we grew up in the Rocky era, watching the Rocky movies
Yeah.
and loving
Oh
those.
man.
And so I had seen this guy fight Tyson. And so we started hanging out, watching fight films that week and playing pool. And at the end of the week, he said, "Would you write my life story?"
Oh.
Yeah, I said yes. I'd love to do that. And knowing nothing about writing books or writing book proposals, I
Oh
flew back and I Googled like how to write a book proposal, and just kind of went for it,
man.
and jumped into the deep end and try to swim my way out. And so that project ended up becoming the book Facing Tyson, 15 Fighters, 15
Oh man.
Stories, which was my first book. The Lions Press picked it up, and man, I remember getting that contract. We had a little house in Lansing, Michigan at the time, and like crying on the steps with my wife, like we've made it,
Yeah.
and knowing having no idea how hard it would be to really make a living as a writer. But it was great, man. So I got to travel around and meet a bunch of fighters and write their stories. And then after that, it was a memoir about a season that I spent playing arena football that won the Michigan Notable Book Award. And not a lot of people read it, but it was a good book. And then I did a couple of books about the church, and that kind of opened up the book publishing thing in the Christian space. And it's been a wild ride, man, and so much fun. And we talked earlier about how we both love stories, and we
Sure.
both love
Oh
connecting
man.
with people, and getting to handle somebody's story well and getting to care for people well in that way is one real area of joy in writing for me. But the other one is just being able to remember well, right? And being
Sure.
able to have an archive for my kids, or one day my grandkids, where they can see what dad was thinking about in 2007 or
Yeah.
whatever. And I got to do a memoir of my boys' adoptions. Both boys are adopted from Ukraine.
That's
And
so awesome. So
um,
I want to. I don't want to go too far from that. 'Cause that was
No.
something I was thinking about last night. I was like, how did that come about? How old were they when
Yeah.
when you adopted them?
Yeah, it was wild. So we had spent right out of college. My wife and I spent a year in Lithuania, which was part of the former Soviet Union,
Yep.
and we were just kind of teaching and really just sort of jacking around and putting off real life for a year. And I'd never, like you, I'd never traveled.
Yeah.
I was a kid who I grew up in 1,200 square feet in Hartford City. I mean, my world was really small. But I met this girl who loved to travel and she was adventurous, and she kind of dragged us to to Lithuania, which was wild. And dude, it was like the Ivan Drago scenes in Rocky 4, you know what I mean? Where he's like he's running through Siberia. And I mean, it really kind of had that vibe about it. So we spent that year and we were teaching, but we also got to volunteer in
Oh
orphanages. And
wow.
man, it was just heartbreaking. It felt like
Yeah.
there was an orphanage on every street corner. And these kids were so needy and we were so young and so immature, but we kind of vowed to each other that at whatever point we wanted to start a family, we would adopt first,
Hmm.
before we even tried to have biological
Mhm.
kids. So that's what happened. I think I was like 27, and we started getting that feeling of, we want to have some
Yeah.
kids. So we went to Ukraine and adopted. It was expensive and hard and challenging, and the agency we used said it was the hardest Ukrainian adoption they'd ever done. And we ended up adopting Tristan. So Tristan's my oldest. He's 21 now, and
Okay.
a dear friend. We're thick as thieves. Now we live together.
Yeah.
We go to the
Oh
gym. We're
wow.
gonna go to the gym this afternoon and lift
That's so
together like
awesome.
my dad and I used to.
Yeah.
And he's strong. He's super strong. He's a way better athlete than I was. Um, but he was a year and a half, and he was in this orphanage in what they call the Crimean Peninsula, which
Mhm.
Russia annexed, in 2011 or whenever
Mhm.
that was. So, and apparently 3 other families had tried to adopt him, and they'd given up because it was too hard. And so
What
we
made it so hard?
well, the corruption in the country and the
Okay.
expense, and I mean, they just put you through the ringer, honestly.
Do you think
And
I was getting ready to ask a question, but
no, go
I'm
ahead,
gonna
man,
ask.
go on.
Do you think it was a money grab?
Sure.
I
Yeah, I
mean,
think it absolutely was. They get you in the country and they allow you to meet the kid and you fall in love with the kid.
yeah.
And then they just keep you there as long as
Yeah.
possible and kind of bleed you dry financially. And there's no reason for it,
Yeah.
So it was tough, but man, the Lord was faithful. And, getting to meet him in the orphanage. And these orphanages were so rough, man. When they brought him out the first time, he was wearing girls' clothes,
Mm.
because that's all they had.
Mhm.
And but we bonded with him immediately and just started loving him.
Hmm.
And so we got him at a year and a half, and then a few years later, we went to Kiev, Ukraine, and adopted my son Maxim, who was 3 at the time, and now
Hmm.
he's 17. And we all love boxing. We spar together, and that's kind of Maxim's thing. He follows the Ukrainian boxers and Lomachenko and those guys, and we enjoy it. We've been blessed, man.
Good.
The Lord's been extremely kind. But I wrote about that in a book called "Hello, I Love You: Adventures in Adoptive Fatherhood." So, yeah, but it was very cool,
That's awesome.
and we've been through a lot together.
Uh, are there times when you guys just sit down and reflect on that whole process? And I mean, they know
Yeah,
they're adopted, obviously, but is
sure.
there,
Yeah,
boy, that's got to be a really interesting conversation to have,
yeah,
especially in the current times with the
yeah.
Russian Ukrainian conflict that's going on there.
That's right.
Boy,
Yeah, we do
that's
reflect on it, and we storytell about it, and we lean on humor,
sure.
and we tell some of the same stories. So like the day that we were supposed to process out of the country with Tristan, so he's a year and a half. He'd never been outside the orphanage before, and we had him in this little apartment in Kiev, and it was like he was shot out of a cannon, dude. He had so much energy,
Hmm.
and KK and I were sick as a dog. We had picked up food poisoning or something, but I was up all night puking, and we were supposed to drive to Warsaw, Poland the next day and do all the processing out in the embassy. And our interpreter called that morning, and she was like, brusque, Ukrainian woman. She's like, meet me on the street corner in 5 minutes, and I said to her, I said, Lesya, I don't think I can do it. I've been throwing up all night, and my wife was starting to feel better, but I was on death's door, man. I was in a bad way. So, she was like, it doesn't matter. We got to do it today. Just get down here. So we're driving around. I puke on her husband's car, and then I puke all over the embassy. And then, so what happened was I was like, I don't think I can make it to Poland, because it was like an 11-hour, like through the night car ride where we have to go through border, security and the whole thing. And so, no joke, man, she walks into a dark alley in Kiev. Kiev's a huge city. It's like Chicago,
Okay.
So we're driving around this huge city. She parks the car. She walks into an alleyway. She comes out with a syringe, dude, which to this day, I have no idea what was in it. And she'd gone into like an apothecary or something in this, and she comes out with a syringe, and she kind of gives the universal symbol for like pull your pants down a little bit. And we're in the middle of broad daylight, huge city. I pull my pants down. She jabs me with this syringe full of whatever. And lo and behold, I felt better, and it helped us get to Poland and finish the adoption. So, we tell that story, and there were just all kinds of crazy ones. But the boys know. And it's funny, Maxim is real interested in his Ukrainian heritage, and Tristan less so. But yeah, it's a part of our life, and we got pictures up and the whole thing. And it's cool.
It's so interesting to me thinking about how folks end up with it, not just in Blackford County, but with a Blackford County connection.
Yeah.
And that's just one more little nugget where I get to pack it away and go, hey, I know a guy who has, and you're not the only one, obviously, that's adopted kids from other countries. But I just think it's really interesting how this little 12,000 population county in the, in the middle of Indiana, in the middle of the Midwest, has such a diverse group of people that end up here.
That's
I was
right.
talking to JD Beckley a few weeks ago about how the south side of Hartford City spoke French.
That's unbelievable, dude.
In 1900, so right around 100 years ago, it was a whole different city on the south side. With its own culture, its own events. I mean, they had celebrations and street parties and fairs and
downtown was vibrant, and booming and all that stuff.
But here on just another part of Hartford City, there was another city, that was thriving. It's just so interesting how people migrate and move, and that's a whole nother podcast. But I love what you've done here and created that. I want to know a little bit about your barnstorming days of football, because obviously I'm a football fan, and
well, football, as you know, I mean, it was a huge part of my life, and you and I had some of the same experiences. Playing Pee Wee in Hartford City, and we shared some Pee Wee stories yesterday. But
I want to say, I got to say it on my podcast, though, that I played for the best football franchise in Pee Wee history.
Yeah, shout out the Kiwanis Redskins, which was the team I wanted to play for, Scott Schick, because my best friend was on the Redskins.
Who was that?
And Mitch Warner.
Oh,
you remember
man,
Mitch?
Absolutely,
yeah. Mitch grew up like a block away from me, so we would ride our BMX bikes over to each
you were in
other's
that
houses.
neighborhood with Thomas and Andrew Mayer and the Smiths, and oh my gosh, Neil Hearns. I didn't know that's where
dude, it was like a dream, man.
That really was. It was. You talk about a John Hughes movie. That
it was unbelievable.
Was 100%. Like it
was
a family neighborhood.
Oh, it was great. And I could ride bikes, and Mitch and I actually, we kind of had a field in the back between both of our houses that we would paint it up like a football field in the fall, and then we paint it like a baseball field in the summer. And gosh, we had fun.
Yeah,
man.
there was like a gravel road that kind of connected.
There was a gravel road that connected. It's now a real road, and there are houses in those fields where we used to play. There are kind of like new houses there. But
I used to mow all those fields, so we had a mowing business. Yeah, so we worked for the Owsleys and the Dr. Scott and all those families out there. But we mowed all the properties, the empty properties out in that area. Where there are houses now. But that's man, every summer I would start out and get on my little tractor, and I'd ride from from I was a West Sider.
Yeah.
I drive from West Sider. I was like 605, right? But I would drive out there
Isn't
on my
it funny
tractor
how
and,
like
and mow all day.
when you're a kid though, it seems like the West Side is a long way away.
Oh man,
You know, because
yeah,
you're kind of you're kind of at the mercy of however far your parents will let you ride on
yeah,
your little BMX bike. You know,
yeah.
so
That's a junkyard
yeah.
dog, man.
Yeah, junkyard dog, baby. The West Side seemed exotic, you know. It seemed exotic and new back in
Ooh,
those
stay
days.
away from
But
there, Ted. Stay away from the
no,
West Side,
no,
Ted. Not allowed to go to the West Side unless
no.
we
But
drop you off at the pool.
yeah, yeah. Oh, the pool, dude. I've literally, I'm so probably troublingly nostalgic. But I've given my kids and my wife like the driving tour of
Yeah,
Hartford City. I showed them the public pool, and you know, so they've been all over. But yeah, playing Pee Wee and like growing up dreaming of being a Blackford Bruin, you
yeah,
know, and going to
absolutely.
the games on Friday nights. My dad would take me out when I was a little kid, and you know, the cheerleaders throw you those little red plastic
Hmm.
footballs, and I would go home and I would dream of being there one day and playing, and you know, some of the leadership lessons and the things I've learned in life happened there. You know, I
Yeah,
remember as a freshman, you know, and you're nervous, man. And I'm like a $140, you know, I'm just a skinny little weak freshman going to workouts the summer between my 8th grade and freshman year and meeting guys like David Parker, who was
yeah,
kind of a golden god. You
yeah.
know, he was a senior when I was a freshman and tremendous athlete. And I remember him putting an arm around me and saying, you know, you need anything around here, you talk to me. And I just felt like I was 8 feet tall in that moment, you
Y-
know, and I've tried to bring people along in my life that way. So that was a huge lesson and a hugely formative kind of Blackford football moment for me. And when I was a senior, I liked bringing the young guys along in that same way. And you know, all those years lifting at the gym and you know putting on 20, 30 pounds of
Right.
muscle in every off season and getting bigger and really going for it, you know. And when I was a freshman, though, I told this story yesterday, and you got to play with some great people in your class, and I got to play with them, you know, when I was young. So guys like Andrew Romine, Jason
Oh
Jones, you
God.
know, just studs, just units, man, tremendous players and tremendous guys. And my freshman year, you kind of have that moment of truth where they bring you up for that week at the end as a
Hmm.
freshman to to practice with the varsity, and you can kind of hide and you can sort of like blend in and be in the back of the line and stuff. And for some reason I decided like I gotta go for it, you know, and I gotta take on the toughest guy in a drill. And so they put me in against Andrew Romine, who, you know, was like Thor Ragnarok. You know, he had this long,
Absolutely.
yeah, flowing blonde hair, huge tree trunk thighs, and was just a complete stud. So we square off in this drill, and he just trucks me, dude, just freight trains me. And I get up and like my helmet's all twisted to the side, and like I had a cut on my cheek. And I remember though people like clapping for me because like I had taken it, you know, I had
Yeah.
taken it like a man. I was like a made man at that point, and it gives you a lot of confidence. It puts some wind in your sails. And my dad noticed when I got home, and it's little things like that that you remember that aren't the big things. You
Sure.
know, it's not like big wins or playing in front of a crowd or getting some honor. It's like when you realized you could make it, you know,
Yeah.
and those are the things that carry you. So yeah, like, you know, having Jim Knuckles come alongside me my senior year after the injury and working with me, those are the things you remember. And I got to tell you a weird Pee Wee Field story, and this will kind of dovetail into the barnstorming years of football.
Okay.
So, long story short, I quit playing at Taylor, and really what my body needed, Scott, was like 2 years of rest.
Okay.
Like I just needed to rest my leg for like 2 years and really let it heal. So I let it heal. Graduated college, started playing semi-pro almost immediately, and played semi-pro on and off really for the rest of my life. Like I suited up a month and a half ago,
Nuh-uh.
so I played a
That's
month and a
so
half
awesome.
ago. And I'll get to that eventually because it involves my son and it involves getting to suit up with my son, which is
Oh
just an
wow.
absolute dream. So this would be like I was in Hartford City for my 10-year high school reunion. So I would have been like 28.
Okay.
And my dad had found out that there was a guy, and I forget what his name was, who had tried to start a semi-pro football team in Hartford City.
Yeah, and his
And
name
they
is right at the tip of my tongue. I
I
can
know it,
see
dude,
him
and
in
it is
my
for me
eyes.
too. And they played on the Pee Wee field, and my dad and I went and we went and watched them play. And I was like, Pops, I was like, I can't resist. I got to call this guy and see if I can just practice with him, because I'm like really like an addict, like a psycho when it comes to football. And like, I couldn't stay away from certain things. So lo and behold, I come down for my high school reunion. And on the day of the reunion, they had a practice and I had my gear with me. So I had my gear with me in the trunk. Because being a semi-pro football player, you always just kind of travel with it.
Yeah.
And at this point in my life, I'm writing for ESPN. Some things are starting to pop. So they practiced on the Pee Wee field, which was surreal. So I'm like this 28-year-old guy. I've got a kid now.
Yeah.
So Tristan was a toddler. And I go out to this Pee Wee field with Tristan and my dad. And they go to that little park that was adjacent and they're playing. And this team had like, just a handful of guys showed up for this practice, but one of them had played at Ohio State, supposedly.
Wow.
And he was this guy that like settled in Hartford City and he'd played at Ohio State and he was a stud. He was probably
Joe Carpenter.
I don't know. What was his name?
Joe
Scott?
Carpenter.
Joe Carpenter. Yeah. He was probably 6'3", 240, just put together.
Such a great guy.
Yeah. And I didn't know him. He didn't know me, but it was kind of the unspoken pact that like we were going to square off at some point. And so lo and behold, we were having like a half line scrimmage and I was playing inside linebacker. He was playing fullback and they ran an ISO at me and hitting Joe Carpenter that day and being hit by Joe Carpenter. I think, Scott, that was the hardest I've ever hit somebody or been hit on a football field. And my dad said it was like a gunshot going off.
Oh, wow.
They were far away in the park and they could hear it. And that was one of my better football moments, believe it or not. Like,
that's so great.
And I don't think Joe Carpenter and I ever had a conversation really after that, other than saying good hit. And
dude,
the team dissolved after that. Yeah, but if you see him, tell him I said hello. And he was part of one of my favorite football moments with my dad.
Awesome.
But yeah, I ended up playing. There were all these little arena leagues in the mid 2000s. I ended up playing in one of those for a team called the Battle Creek Crunch, and that turned into that Book Paper Tiger.
Mm-hmm.
So then I kept doing some arena stuff. Later on, we got an opportunity because of the Book Paper Tiger. I met a guy who played professionally in Italy, and he said, "You really need to come to Europe and play before you're too old." And by that time, I was right on the edge of too old.
Mm-hmm.
But the kids were little. I was freelance writing and adjunct teaching a little bit at a university, but we decided to go for that. So I played in France for a little while, which was like a dream. So we lived in this little 16th century stone cottage in France while I played for this little team. And man, it was unbelievable. And I at times I had to pinch myself, that it was happening. And I got a concussion over there and broke some ribs, and it was a wild ride. But man, so fun and such a blessing. And I'll tell you, when I was at Blackford, to my shame, football was such an idol. And I spent so much time and energy on it that I really missed the magic of a lot of other things about our school, just relationships that I could have had. Sure. And, leaning into academics, which I kind of just didn't care about. And, so I regret that. But then kind of being disabused of the idol in college, and the Lord then gave me opportunities to have real joy in the game later in life. And I'm coaching now. So I coach, we have this little HBCU, historically black college, Lane College in our city. I coach at Lane. So being able to relate to the guys and love them well. And I train with them. I run the sprints with them after practice. And,
so awesome.
And I'm still playing once a year. Our school has this thing called the Buster Bowl, where once a year we do a fully padded game against another school. And my son now is a junior at the school where I teach. And he's a complete stud. He's like 6 foot, 235, deadlifts like 500 pounds. He's like the Andrew Romine of his school, truly.
Wow.
And so we get to play together. And I think I've gotten to suit up in 3 or 4 of those games with my son.
Oh, wow.
And,
that's awesome.
I'm old now and I'm barely making it through the games in one piece, but being able to look across the huddle at my son and see him perform and just reflect on the friendship that we have and the kind of guy that he is. I get choked up talking about it.
Man,
but,
that's great.
It's a blessing. So football has been good to me. And you got to tell Jimmy that me getting hurt in that drill was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it opened up all these other things, and the Lord allowed me to enjoy football in spite of it.
I can't wait to have that conversation with him, and
Yeah.
after he listens, I'm not going to tell him that.
Yeah.
I texted him yesterday, and the intent was to find out if he was going to be available so he could sit in with us,
That'd be
because I'm
incredible.
sure he would
Yeah.
love to see and talk to you.
Dude, can I tell a quick Jimmy Knuckles
No,
story from like a year ago?
Any story I can get about Jim Knuckles,
Yeah.
I can't wait.
So my mom, I don't know if you ever met my mom, probably not, but
I don't think so.
she's like a sweet little old lady now, which
Yeah.
is wild. We've all gotten old, but she works out. She goes and like walks on the treadmill at that little Hartford City Health
Yeah,
Club.
yeah.
Yeah, and Jim goes there. And I had one regret about Blackford football, and that it was that I didn't steal my jersey at the end. Like so many guys that I played with, they would like after the last game, they just throw that little jersey in the bag, and kind of abscond with it. And I was following the Judeo-Christian ethic of thou shalt not steal,
Absolutely, yeah.
So I didn't steal my jersey, but all these years I was like, man, I wish I had a Blackford jersey, because I've got this cigar room in my house where
Sure.
I've got a bunch of memorabilia and stuff hanging in there. And man, I wish I had a Blackford jersey. So my mom, God bless her, she's talking with Jim, and she was like, T really wishes he had a Blackford jersey. And Jim Knuckles, stand-up guy that he is, he like left his workout, drove home, got a Blackford jersey, and like delivered it to my mom.
Oh wow.
And she texted me a picture of her with it. And it was like the greatest thing. And I was like, oh my gosh. So now I have a Blackford jersey thanks to Jim. And
That's so awesome.
That's just, to me, that story is kind of emblematic of the kind of town and the kind of relationships. And I probably haven't seen him in 20 years,
Yeah.
but he remembered me, and I remembered him, and he took care of me in that way.
He sure did. And there was a time you were back in town, and I'm not sure for what it was. I thought maybe it was for some kind of speaking engagement with.
It may have been. Yeah.
And he was so excited that you were going to be here, and
Yeah.
he absolutely loved the relationships that he built with the kids he coached, and
Yeah.
he and I golf together occasionally, and we'll see some of the younger guys out on the golf course that he's had an opportunity to coach with, and just the relationship that he has with those guys, even now, so
Yeah.
many years later,
Yeah.
it's very telling of who he was as a coach, who he is as a person, and
Yeah.
the guys have so much admiration for him, and he has admiration
Totally.
from them as athletes. He
Yeah.
is that guy who absolutely loves and respects the athletic competition component of it, the work
Absolutely.
that goes into it,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
it's impressive. I mean, that guy had a heck of a football career here at Blackford himself, so
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
not like he had some half tail. That guy,
Yeah.
I think he may still be the leading tackler
Yeah.
in the school's history.
Yeah, he was unbelievable, and he was on great teams,
Yeah,
and then went and
absolutely.
played at Taylor. And you mentioned the relational aspect of it. Football, it's such a weird, unique sport. And you mentioned being on the boards with Rob Hess, and it's
Yeah,
so strange in that like you're essentially fighting your friends 5
yeah,
days a week,
yeah.
and you're squaring off against your friends so that you can do it against somebody else on Friday night. And it's so weird if you think about it, but it engenders these deep relationships because you've suffered together.
Yeah.
You've gone through suffering together, and then you see these guys 20, 30 years later, and there's a bond, and it's pretty special.
I took those lessons and integrated them into softball coaching,
Yeah.
and not just softball coaching, but I coached girls basketball at the junior high level for a number of years, and I remember having conversations with the kids about, if your teammate is down, you
Yeah.
need to get them back up. If they
Yes.
fall, you pick them up.
Yeah.
If they're not performing at the level they should, you need to do something to get them in gear. And one of my favorite stories is it's the Christian Leitner movie or documentary. I can't remember
Yeah.
the name of it now, but
Yeah.
where Bobby Hurley was talking about how he would get so pissed off at Kristin because
Yeah.
of the way he inbounded the ball, and
Uh-huh.
Kristin was kind of chuckling. He was like, "Yeah, I did that because I was trying to piss him off. He played a lot better when he was really mad."
That's
So
funny.
he would
Yeah.
literally throw the ball in to where
Yeah.
Bobby wasn't, to make him chase the ball, to upset
Yeah.
him so he
Yeah.
would, perform at the next level. And I thought,
That's
man,
unbelievable.
that's knowing your teammate and what they need. That's
Yeah.
leadership
Yeah.
in a passive aggressive way.
Yeah.
But you know what your team needs, and you're going to find
Absolutely.
it. And I can remember multiple times when we would finish a practice and I would be thanking teammates going, man, thanks for a great practice today because we
Yeah.
got better. We got
Yeah.
better today. And I I don't I don't know how I struggled to communicate that with the players I had, because softball and basketball are very different sports than football is. It's
Yeah, that's
not
right.
a constant physical
Yeah.
struggle with
Yeah.
another person. That
Yeah.
personal connection you make when you make physical contact with someone is very
Yeah.
different than throwing a
Mhm.
ball at them or trying to make a play.
Yeah.
Basketball, you can get a little bit of it, and I created some different drills to make it more physical for my kids so they can get that
Sure.
emotional level up. So I felt like
Yeah.
football was a very emotional game for me, and I'm sure it was
Oh
for
my
you as
gosh,
well. And
yes. Yeah,
I
so
attr-
emotional.
I attribute that to that physical contact that you're
Yeah.
making. There has to be some
Yeah.
sort of chemical release going on in our
I think
brains.
so. Yeah, I think so, and it's like a very palpable feeling of risk, right?
Yeah,
And
sure.
not a little bit of afraid of it, you're probably a sociopath, you know what I mean? Because you're about to go and do a thing that's not normal for a
Yeah.
couple hours. It's a nasty game for nasty people, and you have a real sense of that. And and for me though, being more of a shy kid, especially in high school, it was a place that I felt comfortable performing.
Mm.
The kind of the extroversion would come out as you're flying around making plays and trying to connect with an audience. And even in like a primitive way back then, I didn't know
Yeah.
anything about audiences or connection, but it brought me a lot of joy back then, and the connection with the teammates,
It
and
sounds like it
all
still
that.
is now. I mean,
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it really does. And the relationship with it is different by God's grace. And then you go through that blender of, and I'm sure you've experienced this, trying to be a good sports parent,
oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
not ruin it for my kids by
Yeah.
being too much of a psycho about it. And man,
Mhm.
there were times where I had to apologize to my son,
Oh, same.
because I just, but I tried to control it too much,
Mhm.
and he was gracious and extended forgiveness, and our relationship, I think, grew as a result of it. But yeah, sports, it has a crazy grip on people. And as a parent
That
and
it
as a
does.
coach now, I just desperately want to do it right. I want to honor the Lord with the way that I do it, and I want to honor the people that are involved. And that can be a tough needle to thread sometimes,
Sure.
and yet I still have the memories of like listening to Metallica in the Cleat House at Blackford and flying around with that soundtrack in my head. And football was the closest you could get to living a Metallica song,
So
and
true.
it was a buzz. And
So
I
true.
think I could be 85 laying in a hospital bed, and if somebody played Inner Sandman, I would perk up a little bit. You know what I mean?
Well, you miss out on some of the videos that come across on Facebook and other social
Yeah.
media platforms where it's old people
Uh-huh.
rocking out,
Oh,
just
I love it.
head
Yeah.
banging at the
Love it.
stoplight. Some
Yeah.
dude banging on his
Yeah.
steering wheel, and you can just hear it just crushing in his car. And
I
he's like
love it.
90, and I'm like, that's me. I'm
Yeah.
gonna be that guy. I can't help it.
Absolutely.
I'll look over and
Absolutely.
probably throw up the horns and
No, I love it.
scream.
That's
You
outstanding.
mentioned apologizing for your passion towards
Mhm.
wanting your kid to be successful, and you know,
Mhm.
knowing that struggle, knowing the work that goes into it, and trying to give them an opportunity. And I see it as this, as I did the same thing with my daughters,
Yeah.
specifically my oldest Addison. During softball, when she was very young, I got into coaching not because they were like, oh, there's the next great coach.
Yeah.
I got into coaching because the guy that was coaching your team the previous year, and we're talking about coach's pitch, the
Yeah.
guy that was coaching your team the previous year, his house caught on fire when his meth lab blew up,
Oh
and
my
I
goodness.
wasn't going to
Yeah.
allow that to happen again.
Yeah.
And so I was called to coaching in a way of protecting
Yeah.
my kids and others' kids,
Sure.
knowing my meth lab wasn't going to blow up because I didn't have one.
There you
So,
go. Yeah.
so it was very easy for me to know that that wasn't going to happen. And
Yeah.
a couple of years later, I found myself in the car with her after practice. So she was 9 at this point. We're on our way from a practice, and I'm coaching her in the car, and we're
Uh-huh.
about 2 miles away from the practice field. And
Mm-hmm.
I was upset, and I could tell it was upsetting her.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want her to lose the love of the game
Yeah.
because of me.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And we pulled over to the side of the road, and I apologized to her, and I
Mm-hmm.
said, we've got to figure some things out.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to continue playing softball, and you want to get better at this game, which we'd had those conversations. She had, done some things in the off season. I offered some opportunities for her, and she grabbed them up. It's one of those where
Yeah.
it's like dogs handshaking,
Yeah.
shake.
Yeah.
That dog has no clue what he just agreed to,
Yeah. That's right.
That's what I felt like with kids when you're like,
Yeah.
hey, in the off season, do you enjoy softball? Yeah. Do you want to get better at it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do you think the worst part of your game is? Hitting.
Mm.
Well, if I were able to take you to some hitting lessons with someone to help you
Yeah.
with your swing and mechanics, would you be interested in going?
Yeah.
Yeah. If we sign up for this, it's going to be a weekly thing, and
Mm-hmm.
we're going to go.
Yeah.
There's going to be times when you don't want to go, but we're going to.
Yeah.
And you're going to get better, and you're not going to see it until next season.
Yep.
So you got to have some long-term thought. Are you okay with that? Yeah. And
Yeah.
still, it's like, shake.
Yeah. I know.
But we did it. And Addison put a lot of work in that winter and come back out. And I still found myself in jerk mode. And this is when we had that conversation. And I said, I can tell you love doing this. You're having
Yeah.
fun. You're connecting with something. I don't want to be upset when we leave practice. You don't want to be
Yeah.
upset when we leave practice. How
Yeah.
about if when we leave practice in softball is over, and if
Yeah.
you want to talk about it, you bring it up. If
Oh,
you
that's
don't,
good. Yeah.
I won't mention it. I'll ask,
Yeah.
did you have fun?
Yep.
And we'll base everything on that. And so from 9 years old until her senior year in high school, and I coached her as a junior and senior, and I coached her in travel ball for a couple years as well. That was our conversation when the game was over. Did you have fun
Yeah.
today?
Oh, that's good.
Did you
Yeah.
have fun today? Because
Yeah.
at the end of it, it's a game.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
even though, you can still, evidently you can still participate in football at 47. I had no
I don't-
idea.
I don't recommend it. Yeah, that's probably very unwise. Unwise at
Oh,
best.
God, I
you
went and
know?
played basketball with some guys from work a few weeks
Yeah.
ago. Oh my gosh. And there's a fella, my boss, he's 62, I think,
Mhm.
and he's getting up and down the court. He's not
Yeah.
a big guy.
Yeah.
And I think for us big guys, it's a little bit different. I've been carrying
is,
around
yeah.
200 plus pounds since I was 18.
It's a different deal.
It
Yeah.
is. So, and there's an energy crisis going on in my body
For
very
sure.
quickly,
For sure.
where I
Yeah.
feel like if I was 170, 160, I could
Yeah.
probably get around a little bit longer than what I
Yeah.
do. But
Yeah.
anyway, I remember getting home that night, and I felt great because I'd competed.
Oh, yeah.
Heck, I scored a couple points.
There you go.
I hit a bank shot 3-pointer. I called it.
Nice.
But there's something about sport. There's something about that that I think provides us with an energy, with maybe not a purpose, Ted, because I don't want to put it that way. I feel like my
Yeah.
purpose is much larger than that. But it
Sure.
certainly allowed me to open a door early on
Mhm.
to understand the suffering,
Yeah.
the reward that comes through that. And my wife and I, we both still work out and run and get on the bike and do push-ups, sit-ups, stuff like that. But
Mhm.
I do it much differently than her.
Yeah.
It's almost as if I am, gosh, what's his name? Pushes the rock up the hill.
Oh yeah.
Syphagus, not that. That's not.
Gosh, couple of great students we are.
Oh, right.
I know who you're talking about, but I can't remember the
Oh
name.
God, I can see
Yeah.
the image. But that's
Yeah.
what I feel like when I'm working out. I'm pushing that
Yeah.
rock up the hill,
Yep.
and I know at some point it's going to roll back down on me, and I'm going to have to
Yeah.
push it up again. And
Yeah.
I took to running this year, and I think that's part of why I needed a new challenge. I needed
Yep.
something that was going to help me suffer,
Yes.
that was
Yeah.
going to put me in that mode. And
Mhm.
it was football where I
Mhm.
learned that.
Yeah, and you learn to kind of control your relationship with anxiety. I
Sure.
think the younger generation now, the term anxiety has been demonized to such a degree that if you have any anxiety in your life whatsoever, it's like we got to get that out, and I'm
Right.
like, well, I tell my student writers and my athletes, I'm like, not all anxiety is bad anxiety.
Yeah.
Like I was nervous
Man.
every day of my life my freshman year at Blackford,
Right.
thinking about practice and workouts and all that stuff. But, it helps you manage your relationship with those things. And, it can bring a whole bunch of joy and you test yourself. And it's funny you mentioned the running, which I really admire. Like, good on you for doing that. Um,
It's
I
it's a
still,
struggle every step, brother. It's a
Man,
struggle
one of the
every
more
step.
tragic things in my life, and it's gonna be tragic. I still train like I'm training for something. You know what I
Good for
mean?
you.
And once a year it's been this football game, which I think I need to stop doing that probably. And there was a time in Michigan when I was managing a pro heavyweight fighter, and I
Oh
had a
wow.
boxing ring in my basement,
Oh my
and
gosh.
I was his sparring partner. So Sam would come out, he'd come out into the suburbs once a week, and we would spar in my basement, and he'd bring his daughters out, and my sons were there, and we're battering each other around this
Oh
ring,
my
and
gosh.
I loved it, man, and it gave me something really tangible to train for and learn.
That's
You're
it.
learning a new skill, you're getting better, and as I see kind of older age on the horizon, I'm lamenting, there's going to come a time when I can't spar anymore, and when I
Mhm.
can't for this football game, and what am I going to want to train for? I really am kind of afraid of that.
Uh, it's so interesting you say that because I just had a conversation with Jennifer. And by the way, Jennifer, my wife, is Jim Knuckles' sister,
Yeah, I
and
remember you saying that. That's
just
amazing. What a small world.
it's so. And Jim's my neighbor.
Yeah,
I could see his truck from my window behind me, and
that's amazing.
over on this side, my neighbor is David Parker. Both people that have
Unbelievable.
made an
Yeah.
impact for you, and uh,
Well, tell him I said hello
I
for
certainly
sure.
will. And I
Yeah.
can't wait to share that story with David.
Yeah.
It's those little conversations.
Yeah,
But
it's huge.
so thinking about that training piece, I was just telling her that we're going to Key West in a few weeks, and there's a 5K down there, and I
Mhm.
just ran a 5K. It was the Fort Wayne Cider Hustle,
Mhm.
and so we got
There
mugs
we
for
go.
running in there. You get a coffee
Yeah.
mug for running a 5K,
I love it.
and a caramel apple. That's what we got.
Oh,
But
nice.
so there's one down in Key West, and it's the day after our flight. So we fly in on Friday night, and Saturday morning at 7 a.m. they have a 5K run,
Yeah.
and I've been considering running it. And last night she and I were just up talking, and she said, I don't think I'm going to run in that 5K. If you want to, that's
Mhm.
fine, but I'm not going to. And I started thinking about it, and I thought, I'm going on vacation for a week. And I get
Mhm.
there on Friday night. Saturday morning is day one of vacation. If I
Yeah.
get injured in that 5K,
Yeah.
my vacation and hers is
Yeah.
going to be very different.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and she has warned me, don't get hurt. Don't hurt yourself on the treadmill. And I've had some IT band issues over the past few
Yeah.
years because I decided I was going to be a runner at one point. And
Yeah. Yeah. You
double
know,
IT band is terrible. Let me tell you.
oh yeah, sports now is all about not tearing my Achilles.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
to that point of like your wife and injuries. So this last football game that I played with Tristan was like the first weekend in November. The next week, I was taking my wife to Rome for her 50th
Oh,
birthday.
man.
And we got this I got a chance to do some public speaking in Rome. So the trip was kind of half paid for. And she loves Europe. She loves to travel. And I was like, how am I going to take my lady to Rome? This is going to be like a dream, you know? But I was like, I gotta play in this football game too, dude. I'm not letting that little thing go, you know? And
Right.
I was like, man, but if I blow my Achilles playing in the Buster Bowl the week before Rome, she's literally going to leave me probably, you know, like I'm going to have to navigate singleness in middle age, you know, what a nightmare.
God.
And so I'm playing in this game, and I re-injured some ribs that I had injured in France, and I kind of had an early exit, but I ended the game in one piece, and
Good.
we got to enjoy Rome. But yeah, you start doing that calculus, and it's difficult, right? Because it's like you want to be a runner, and you want to live your life, and you want to maximize everything that the Lord's given you in this stage of your life, and yet, yeah, you're trying to make these choices of, but I don't want to put myself in harm's way unduly. You know,
Right.
I don't want to do something so unwise as to set me back in my family life or my career or whatever. And it's a weird kind of calculus at our age, you know?
It is. And the idea of that, I'm going to go to Key West with a beach body is so far gone.
Right.
That's way in the rearview mirror. But at least I want to go down there and enjoy myself and not get out of breath walking to and from the beach.
Yeah.
That's
right.
It's kind of the goal. And I've been that guy. That was so far out of shape and so overweight. And, we talk about being 200 pounds, for our lives. And when I hit 300, that was a whole different ache and pain on my body, the knees, hips, everything felt it. And I was able to drop 65. I'm back up like 10, 15 from that low point. When you starve yourself and literally dehydrate yourself to hit a goal weight,
I know
it's not really a goal. You didn't really.
And it's
hit
crazy.
the goal,
like people who don't have to battle that don't understand.
Brother.
So my
God
wife
bless
is a
them.
chef. She's a professional chef.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, it's unbelievable, Scott. But it means I have like amazing food in my house at all times.
Can you guys even go out to eat?
We do, but I'll tell you, I've gotten spoiled.
Yeah.
Like if I go out to eat and I have a bad meal, I'm like, and
I could have done that for 50 cents on the dollar.
Exactly. But she's so creative, and seeing her creativity kind of flourish in that realm has been so much fun and so joyful, and we just enjoy food together wherever we go. But yeah, then I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh dang, like a couple of weeks of just wild eating in Rome, and I've got some damage control to do now on the
I played linebacker at one point. Now I'm playing tackle. What the heck happened?
Dude, that's literally how it happened with my football career. So as I got older and slower, I would move closer into the interior of the line. So like I've been playing center and guard the last few years, because I'm not I'm not flying around sideline to sideline anymore.
Weren't you a long snapper?
I was,
Okay.
yeah, which is the worst job in all of football, and I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, but I was a long snapper, and one of the books that I wrote a few years, it was probably a decade ago now, was about long snapping, and it was about, I had to get it right. So when I was playing arena ball in 2006, and you probably heard baseball players or even golfers talk about the yips, where you just get so in your own head you can't do basic movements that you used to do. So like a catcher in baseball will get the yips, and he won't even be able to toss the ball back to the pitcher. The ball's sailing over the pitcher's head or whatever, or a pitcher throwing to first for a pickoff play or whatever, they get the yips. And so I had gotten the yips with my long snapping, and I'm struggling to make the field goal snap, which is like a 7-yard snap, and I'm sailing them over the snapper or the holder's head, and I'm rolling them back. It was a nightmare, dude. And so from 2006 until like a decade ago, I didn't snap a football, and I was just like, I'm done with it. But we were living in Michigan. We had this great big deep basement where I had the boxing ring, and Tristan, my son, was starting to get old enough to he was playing peewee and catching footballs and stuff. And so one night in the winter, I'm in the basement and I'm snapping balls to Tristan, and I'm like, I'm feeling pretty good. I still got it. I can still snap. And so the goal became, I've got to master this thing again. I got to wrestle it to the ground and snap in a game again.
Yeah.
I got to snap in an arena game and expunge the demons. So I get this grand idea. I start snapping in the basement a whole bunch. Well, I snapped a ball through our basement window in the middle of winter in Michigan, and like snow's billowing in. And I called my dad, and he was in a car full of people. I told him what happened. They were all laughing at me, but patched up the window, kept snapping, and I eventually got to snap for a team in Chicago called the Windy City Ravens. And I got to snap in an arena game and kind of like put that to rest finally. But
that feels good.
Yeah, it does feel good. And it's one of those things that it was extremely stupid to anybody but people who understand that sort of thing, But I was like, man, I gotta get on top of this for myself, So I interviewed a bunch of long snappers, and I went to some like long snapping schools, and it's a whole boutique cottage industry now about getting guys scholarships and stuff like that. It's totally different than it was when we played, but it was a fun project for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's next? We talked a little bit about we got to talk about Silverdome, man. And we got to I got to know more about this future feature film that you've been working on.
Yeah. So, doing magazine work, doing books for the balance of my career, I had always kind of had this dream of writing a movie, So I had this run when I was younger where every year I would write a screenplay just for practice. And I taught myself how to write them by just reading them online. So I found this like script clearinghouse online. So I'd read scripts from my favorite movies, and I kind of got a sense for the pacing and the flow and the formatting, the way of doing it. So we were living again in Michigan, and we were nearish to Detroit. And there was this domed stadium in Detroit called the Pontiac Silverdome, where the Lions used to play, the Pistons played there, the Pope played there, Led Zeppelin. It was a huge premier domed venue, seated like 80,000 people. But then the Lions moved out of it in like the early 2000s, and it just sat there. And it sat there as the roof came down eventually, and the earth kind of started to take it back over, and it was beautiful. So every couple of years, I would like Google image Silverdome, Detroit ruins or whatever. And I would look at these haunting images. So eventually I wrote this story about an ex-player, an ex-pro player who leaves his kind of suburban job and wife and family and goes to live as a squatter at his old stadium in the Pontiac Silverdome. And it was kind of this existential story. And really the whole movie is the wife finds him there in the first act. And then they just walk and talk through the Silverdome, and he kind of tells his football story, and they reconcile their marriage, So I wanted it to be this redemptive thing kind of set on the backdrop of the stadium. And I wrote it really because I wanted to try to convey to my wife the grip that football had on my heart for all those years, because it was one of the few areas in our life where we didn't really connect. She wasn't an athlete, so she didn't understand that mentality. So I wrote this film really for her. And I almost sold it to a guy in Hollywood. There was a guy named Timothy Busfield who was the brother-in-law in Field of Dreams. He was in a show called The West Wing. And he was interested in buying the script for a while. And it went so far as like I met with him in Michigan in like a soccer zone on like a turf field to teach him how to throw a football so that he could play the lead role in this movie. And it kind of became evident that he was wrong for it. So I didn't sell it to him. But a few years ago, I'd become friends with this guy named Glenn Pakulak, who's a dear friend now. He had played in the NFL as a punter, and he was all SEC punter at Kentucky, and an unspeakably handsome guy who had moved to LA to try to become an actor and a model, right? So Glenny was kind of flogging away out in LA trying to do that. And I sent him this script just to read as a friend, and he called me a couple days later, and he said that was the most beautiful thing I've ever read, and it's the story of my life. And he's like, we got to do it. So his best friend is Cliff Kingsbury, who's the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. So Cliff became the executive producer of our movie, and we got a little crew together. We started a little company, and we shot in the Pontiac Silverdome for 10 days. So we had 10 days in there right before they blew it up. And we were in there with no running water, no electricity. So we had to bring in all that with generators and the whole thing. And the guys just did a tremendous job. So our female lead in the movie was a woman named Carmen Serrano, who was in Breaking Bad. So she played Glenn's wife in the film, and we shot for 10 days. And you know, we're almost done. We're about 85% of the way through post-production. We have a couple of rough cuts. It's going to be a feature film, so it'll be 2 hours long, and
Wow.
Lord willing, it'll be distributed sometime before I'm too old of a man, and I'll get a chance to write some more movies, because it's a particular kind of joy as a writer, seeing your words come to life in that way. So the movie's really autobiographical. You know, I never lived as a squatter in my old stadium,
Right.
but like just that a lot of the stories and a lot of the stuff with my dad and just a lot of things that happened to me in football found their way into that script. And it's a special one, man. It's a passion project, you know, near and dear to the heart. And I'm glad we did it independently, even though it's so hard to make a movie that way. You know, it's almost impossible, which is why a lot of people don't do it, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, that's just awesome. As you said that, I was thinking, well, I could imagine myself being a squatter at the Cleat House.
Absolutely, man. You got laundry in there. You got
Right.
that little equipment room.
There's
You know,
a,
you
there's a
can make a
concession
go of it.
stand. I mean,
Absolutely. Dude,
what,
do you know that I think Blackford County kids, I think we're the only people in the world who call it a cleat house.
isn't that bizarre? I've
It's
found that
crazy.
myself. Like
Yeah.
everybody else, it's a locker room or a field house or
Yeah.
something. And
I was ghostwriting a book for a kid named Zach Ertz, who played for the Philadelphia Eagles. He was on their Super Bowl teams. He played tight end. And, you know, as a ghostwriter, you're kind of interviewing and getting a sense for somebody else's story and trying to write it in their voice. But in the book, I had referred to like the locker room as the cleat house. And he called me and he was like, what's a cleat house? Like, what is this? And he was like, I've literally never heard that in my life. He had played at Stanford and played for the Eagles. And I was like, man, I think that's a Blackford County thing that made its way into that book.
I'm going to dig around now.
Dig around.
I get in contact with a lot of ADs, and I'm going to start asking them, you know, hey, did you guys have a cleat house? You know,
because man, that's a part of our experience. They had that leg press machine in the cleat house. You remember that?
And the neck. There was a neck.
Oh, the neck thing.
Nautilus type.
Dude.
I blame that machine on why I can't buy a dress shirt today. So,
yeah, that's right.
You know, I can't fit my neck. If I get an 18.5-inch neck, it's still tight, but the shirt looks like I'm wearing
like a tent.
a sheet off of a king size bed. So
exactly.
I don't know how I get around that, but I need a 19-inch neck dress shirt for one to be comfortable. And then to find a tie, Michael Strahan makes a great tie that is long enough to meet the demands of a larger neck. But like, what the heck? I was addicted to that machine. I love that machine. I love doing things for, you know, doing shrugs to work on
for the traps.
Oh man, I was
absolutely
T-bar rows. That was always kind of my thing. Everybody else was chest and arm. I was always back and neck. And
I love it,
I'm
man.
paying for it today, dude. I'm telling you.
Well,
I can't buy a T-shirt that like I'm wearing a crew neck T-shirt today only because it's loose, but I can feel it.
Like, it kind of drives you crazy.
I do. And thank God for my wife. She introduced me to V-necks, but all my V-necks now look like, you know, they're made of bacon. I don't buy clothes often enough, I guess.
It's tough for bigger guys to buy clothes off the rack.
Dude, I went and bought jeans the other day, and I haven't been jean shopping. My wife will bring jeans home for me, and none of them fit right. You know, I'm not a skinny leg person. I have quads and like, but I don't have a butt anymore. So I went jean shopping the other day, and I put on 16 pair of jeans,
man,
to find 4.
What a journey!
I was sweating at the end, like it was so.
Dude, you gotta try a company, and this is hilarious. This has devolved into fashion talk with middle-aged men. You know,
that's the Chic Show. That's the
Chic Show. But you gotta try a company called the Perfect Jean Co.
All right, I'm gonna write that down.
They're online. My wife is on social media, so she found them on Instagram, and man, it's all I wear anymore.
Okay,
you know, it's a kind of great athletic cut jean, and there's a little bit of I can't believe we're having this. A little bit of spandex in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like
so
that.
It gives a nice stretch, and they look good.
I mean, I put on a pair of Levi's. I couldn't even wear them.
Yeah,
like they were. I've been wearing dress slacks for so long as a teacher and administrator that when I first started wearing dress slacks, I was like, "Oh, this is uncomfortable. I just want my jeans."
Yeah,
And
yeah, for
now it's
sure.
like, dude, I just want my dress slacks back.
Yeah, I know it,
They
man.
were
We got to
so
get you in a pair of
comfortable and
slacks. We
light.
got to get you suited up. Yeah,
So weird.
it is.
Getting old, brother. Getting old.
I know,
I'm in my
man.
prime. I don't know about you, but I'm in my prime. It sounds like you are too. And
You know what, man?
yeah,
You look like you're in your prime. You
uh,
you look no different than when we were in high
well, I
school.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
I've grayed up a little bit, and I've put
yeah.
on some weight, but um, I
You still got a jawline and stuff, man.
I
You look
do.
good. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
one? The
Yeah, exactly. We
Thanks,
got to
man.
pick one now.
I like how
Yeah,
you stated that. That was very polite. So you still have
yeah.
a jawline. It doesn't mean you don't have three of them, but you do have one.
Exactly,
But
exactly.
it's not because of good healthy living. I'll tell you that. I've definitely
No.
put my body through some hell, and it
Yep.
could have been very different. I was thinking over the past couple months to tell my daughters, just take care of your body now. Don't do a whole
Yeah.
lot. Just do
Yeah.
enough to
Yep.
maintain. Don't
Yep.
let yourself go, and you'll thank yourself for it later. And because it's a lot of work to drop 60 pounds, that was tough. But you get into these bad habits, and very quickly it becomes comfortable.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to maintain that, and then when you do finally go work out again. So for me, I didn't work out for so long that when I did, it was injury, instant injury.
Oh,
Within one
sure.
week, I
Yeah.
was laid up for 6 months because
Yeah.
I have that killer mentality of I have to suffer in order, it has to hurt in order
Yes.
for me to know that I'm getting stronger, to know
Yeah,
that
that's
I'm
right.
healthier, which is
Yeah.
total opposite of where we
Yeah.
should be at, in our mentality, especially as we age. There should be, I should not be so sore the next day
Yeah.
because of a
Yeah.
workout that I can't move. It defeats
No,
the
that's
whole
right, man.
purpose.
And no, it's interesting. And like, again, to my own shame, when I was young, it was so important to me I had to be the king of the jungle in the
Oh
gym.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
wanted to be the strongest. And I just can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
If I try to bench heavy now, my shoulders would fly apart because of
Right.
all the hell that I've
Oh,
put them through with all the football. And I think I've broken every finger.
oh
I've broken
man,
some
I feel
ribs.
that.
I got a rod in my collarbone. I've had a few concussions. We talked about concussion
Oh,
stuff yesterday a little bit, but this old body's been through some things, and at this point, I'm grateful to be in the gym, and maintaining and still doing the cardio and
yeah.
running with my players, and as long as the Lord gives me to do that, I'll be grateful.
Dude, I love talking to you, and even though we had an hour and a half yesterday, we're at an hour 42 now,
There we go.
and I feel like it was a totally different conversation.
Man, it's been awesome. It
And that's
really has been
so
awesome, and
bizarre.
I want to tell you, you are a natural at this, and you're good at something that I try to get my journalism students to be good at, which is kind of being in the moment in a conversation and following up things that you think are interesting. And you're very good at that, and you're a natural at it. So just
Well,
keep up
thank
the
you. I
good work,
appreciate
man,
it.
and keep putting these out. I love listening to them. I love the Hartford City nostalgia that it brings.
Sure.
Like listening to like you and Doug Beckley talk about the
Oh man,
geography of town.
we have
That you
so
could
much
shoot
more.
that into my veins. That was outstanding,
We have
you
so
know?
much more to talk about. So he just
I
got another
know.
book. I've got it's over on the floor, but I've got this huge. I'm going to grab it.
Yeah, grab it.
So I've got this monster of a book. I'm trying to
What?
show you here.
Biographical memoirs of Blackford County. Where did you get that?
So
That's amazing.
my wife found this at a bookstore up in Fort Wayne.
Okay.
The day I ran in the hustle, we all ran in the hustle that day,
Hmm.
and we got done and we went out for breakfast at a little cafe down in I don't know, just kind of a little pocket, one of those little communities within the
Yeah.
city,
Yeah.
and went out for breakfast. This little cafe that was just the nip and sip, dude. It was.
Love it.
So we get done there and we see the bookstores opening across the street. It's becoming a beautiful day. It started out
Yeah.
cold, rainy. I ran my
Yeah.
first 5K in like 35-degree weather with
Wow.
drizzle.
Attaboy. Way to go.
And I wasn't feeling well. I had the early symptoms of bronchitis coming on.
Hmm.
So we get done, we eat, we go across the street. There's a bookstore, and I was telling you, my youngest, Jocelyn, is she has a degree in creative writing.
Man.
My girls are book lovers.
Yeah.
Um,
Same.
I just it never grabbed me. I'm
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
spoken word, and I'm a huge
Yeah.
fan of Henry Rollins. He's like
Oh yeah.
one of my big
Black Flag guy.
dude.
Yeah.
Like early on, this is one
Yep.
of those where I'm just
It's
early
awesome.
on a huge fan of him. But
Yeah.
so she finds this book. I'm down the street in like a little Shotsky, man
Yeah.
cavey type store,
Sure.
and
Sure.
I get done in there and I go out and I sit in this little courtyard, and they come walking by and she says, "Hey, I almost bought you a book. Um, I just wasn't sure if you would read it." And
Hmm.
I'm like, "Yeah, it's probably for the best."
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not a big book reader. The last book I tried to read was The Psychology of the Sopranos, and
Mm.
I got through like maybe six chapters in that book, and of a nine
Yeah.
chapter book, and now I can't find it. So that tells you
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
interested in reading I am. And she's, well, it was a book about the history of Blackford County, and it was like memoirs from people who founded the county and
Man.
settled here early. And I'm like, okay, well, that's different than a book to me.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
historical record, and I'm into it.
That's right.
Let's go look. She goes, well, it was kind of expensive. I said, well, let's see what it is.
Yeah.
And she brings this thing to me, and I'm like, I don't care how much that is. We're buying it. I gotta
Yeah.
have that.
Yeah.
And so I got it. And then Jack has one that's 2 or 3 years older.
Okay.
So I can't wait to see what that brought about,
Yeah.
because he's kind of the unofficial historian uh, moving
Which,
forward for Harvard City, Blackford County.
man, what a cool thing for him to have fallen into. And
Right.
again, in this pantheon of like people that you knew in high school who have gone on to become whatever they've become, right?
Yeah.
And you don't see somebody for decades, but you kind of look on with pride,
Yeah.
and there's a sense of satisfaction in like, oh, yeah, that guy, he's doing something awesome now, and you love to see it, you know.
It,
So
this
very cool.
podcast has continued to evolve and change, and I think that's the one thing about it I like the most is that it doesn't follow a specific format. It
Yeah.
doesn't follow a specific, train of thought. I don't
Hmm.
have an agenda outside of I want to talk to some interesting people,
Yeah.
and ordinary people who've done some incredible things. And you've certainly
Hmm.
done some just extraordinary things that I think many of us, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday, who knew
Mm.
that you could create a living writing?
Yeah.
That you could live the life you've lived as a
Yeah.
writer, that
Yeah.
there were opportunities to play football and to adopt and all the things you've done in this,
Mm.
and it's a short span of time. I mean,
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things, that's from, let's say, 16 to 47. That's a 30-year span. Man, that is a
Yeah.
tick turd in the history of mankind.
So
And
true. Yeah.
the impact you have had, um, I don't think any of us realize the impact we truly have.
Hmm.
Especially while we're here. Some people
Yeah.
may.
Hmm.
I would like to think that people who have great fame and who have created, just incredible opportunities realize the impact they've had on people. But
Yeah.
I don't think we truly can appreciate our reach,
Yeah.
in the moment.
Well, that's right.
I think we're creating something here, that selfishly I created it for what you were talking about. I want to make sure that my grandkids know what I sounded like.
Yeah.
But even deeper than that, I don't want it to be just a video camera into my
Hmm.
life of, family functions.
Yeah.
But I want it to be deep thought of, boy,
Hmm.
eventually, hopefully, I become Grandpa Schick or Grandpa
Yeah.
whatever. They can call me anything they want. I don't care.
Yeah.
But hopefully, I become Grandpa Schick that had the ability to think deeply
Hmm.
and to appreciate relationships in a way, that I wanted to share my
Yeah.
journey,
Yeah.
but I also wanted to share it alongside others.
That's right.
Um,
Well, and they're going to learn how to relate to people well by listening to you do it.
I hope
And
so.
how rich will that be?
I
You
hope so.
know,
Yeah.
you talk about a legacy, you could do a lot worse than that.
Well, I hope so, because there were times, Ted, when
Yeah.
I was definitely on a lot worse than that track.
Yeah.
And
You and me both.
thank God for my wife and my kids for
Indeed.
providing me with the support I needed and the
Mm-hmm.
love to
Mm-hmm.
do what I do now. But man, it's been fantastic talking to you. I can't wait to connect again,
Oh, I know
and
it.
we'll find more. And when this movie comes out, I definitely want to talk more about it, and we can
For
reflect on
sure.
that.
For sure.
But now I've got to go. I've got to go read a couple of your books and dig into you more.
Well, listen, man, after we wrap this, shoot me your address and I'll drop a little mailer of books in the mail
Oh
for you.
no,
So
come on now.
yeah,
Oh, that's
I'll grab
awesome.
a selection off the shelf, and yeah, I don't want you paying for them. I don't want a
Oh,
Hartford City guy paying for
man,
books.
you just got me so
So
excited. Like I'll
yeah, of
read it.
course,
Like
man.
when they're gifted like that, I read
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, it's fun.
It's so
Mm-hmm.
different. It's interesting how maybe it's because I am so relational that
Mm-hmm.
the fact that my wife cared enough to see that book and share it with me.
Yeah, she knew that
I've
would delight you.
I've
Yeah,
read it from front to back, and you saw, man, that's a monster.
it's a monster.
I have
Yeah,
read it front to back, and I read it front to back within like 2 days.
that's so impressive. Yeah.
I couldn't put it down. I had to
Yep.
know more.
Yep.
And so it's meaningful to me when things are given to me. And so I truly appreciate that. I'll shoot you a message and get that to you.
Do it.
Where
Yeah,
can
for
people
sure.
where can people find you outside of LinkedIn? How are they going to connect and find you? You're all
Well,
over.
probably the best way is to just put my name into Amazon. So
Okay.
they can search Ted Kluck on Amazon and see all the books, or they can just throw it into Google. I'm writing columns. So the columns that you found in World Magazine, I'm doing those now. And I have a Substack. So cluck.substack.com. If they want to subscribe for free to the Kluck Substack, they can do that. I got a couple of podcasts.
Nice.
One is just called Kluck. So it's my last name, and I have another one called the Gut Check Podcast that was an endeavor with a guy that I started a book publishing company with about a decade ago. So they can check me out on those, and or they can shoot an email through my university email. So
Okay.
I'm kind of old school, kind of
I
lo-fi
like
with
it.
the social media and all that. But man, it has been a joy connecting with you as well, and yeah, just a great conversation.
You remember my worry
super,
yesterday
super
that
great.
was we wouldn't find that organic feel that we
I
had,
know it.
and
I know it.
I don't think we missed a beat. Like
I don't
I've
think
got
we did.
chills on my arms right now just thinking about
Oh, good.
we
Good.
found it. And
Yeah.
I love taking things full circle. It was one of the things that my students always were like almost anticipating
Yeah.
as we go through a lesson in the day. I just want to remind you, we started this conversation talking about an article on White Christmas,
Yeah.
and the title of that article is "Everybody's Got a Little Larceny in Them." So I just want to point that out. The first thing we talked about was, just search me on Amazon.
I know it, man. I know it. I know it.
And that's so bizarre. Like,
It's so bizarre. And who knew? Who would have thought? Like, yeah, it's crazy. It's
I
definitely
love
crazy.
it, brother, and
Yeah.
I hope this gives you just a few more people in your audience to check you out and to rediscover Ted Kluck, because I think there's a lot of people here in the county that remember you and knew that your journey had started down this path of becoming a writer and becoming an entertainer. I mean, a writer is an
Yeah.
entertainer, and
Yeah.
but to know that you have the podcasts out there as well, that's incredible
Yeah.
to me. I didn't know that until yesterday.
Yeah.
Shamefully, I started looking into you a half hour before we talked yesterday.
Well,
And
it all came together pretty quick.
it did.
So
It
yeah.
makes it easy when you're very relational and very humble, and I love your story, and I love how it's told. It's not
Yeah.
an in your face. Here's what I did. I think you really appreciate the journey. Probably as much as the accolades, and maybe more.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of value in that, and man, I wish you and your family the best. Have a great new
Oh,
year.
likewise. Yeah, you got to holler at me when you come through Memphis in a few
Yeah,
months. So
man, I can't
yeah.
wait. I was telling Jennifer about that last night. So she had friends that lived in Jackson.
No way.
Yeah, so she worked at a place in Kentucky at a hospital there, and she had met a girl there who was when we lived in Madison, Indiana, and her husband moved to Jackson. He was with some kind of car manufacturing
Okay. Yeah.
facility that's there, and they lived there for a couple years, and just recently moved back to Madison. But
Okay.
they absolutely love Jackson, and
Yeah.
so it was a great community. And
Yeah, we love it, man. We love it. Give me a shout out when you come
do.
through, and we'll grab a bite, or you can
Man, I like
come out to the cigar room, and
like it.
and we'll keep the conversation going.
Great
I love
stuff,
it.
brother. We'll
Yeah.
talk to you soon. Thanks so much for coming on, and that's it, people. We're out of here.